Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach.Better from Maduro Learning. My name is Clint Hamada.
And my name is Kim Capino, and we'll be your hosts for today's episode. This week, I talked to Reid Wilson, Year 5 homeroom teacher at NIST International School in Bangkok, Thailand. Reid shares his experiences as a classroom teacher working with a wide variety of coaches, both at NIST and in his previous schools. Reid shares his perspective on how coaches are experts at giving their teachers permission for potential, as well as specific feedback on what can make the coaching experience even more invaluable for teachers. For coaches wondering how best to work with the innovative and risk-taking staff at their school, this conversation has a wealth of feedback and practical strategies. Unfortunately, Clint couldn't be here with us for this conversation today, so it's just me and Reid.
If you enjoy any part of this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us to know what you want to hear more about. Also, subscribe to the channel to see all of our coaching videos and click on the notifications bell so you know as soon as each video is posted.
And please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got 2 great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. Hi, Reid. We're live. Can you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your professional history as an educator?
Sure. My name is Reid Wilson. I'm originally from Wisconsin in the United States. Currently teaching at NIST International School in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm a Year 5 homeroom teacher, 4th grade, and have been overseas for about 13 years and been at NIST now for 7 years.
Awesome. And I know the way that you teach, you have taken advantage of all of the opportunities that NIST has, including lots of work with coaches.
Yes.
So in your perspective as a classroom or homeroom teacher, what do you think coaches do? How would you describe their role?
I think what I would probably do is look at what I think coaches do in general. And if I look at the broadest definition of a coach and with my understanding, I would say it's to help people reach their maximum potential or capacity. And so within an educational context, I would say that coaches are there to help you become your best self, not only as an educator, but also as a colleague, a thinker, a reflector, anything that we hope teachers are for the generations that we're teaching. So I think they're there to support and help you realize who you can always be. Something along those lines.
That is like the most beautiful definition of what a coach is. I just want to leave it at that. Thank you. That's so lovely.
Cool.
So tell us, how do you work with the coaches at your school? And I know you know that I am mostly interested in tech coaches, but we don't have to talk just about tech coaches because you are fortunate to have literacy and math coaches too. I think no science, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Literacy and math.
So how do you work with the coaches at your school? What is the relationship like? Like, how does it work?
Well, we're pretty lucky at NIST because we have 4 coaches in the elementary, and they're all just absolutely fantastic. We have 2 innovation coaches, a literacy coach, and a math coach. And they're always there for us, which is really cool. And it's just a matter of reaching out to them, either through an online booking system that we have or just in passing in the hall. Or shooting an email or whatnot, and they're people who will do anything for you to help you in whatever goal you've set for yourself. So I feel like we've taken advantage of them as much as we can, because I think what's been happening lately is we're kind of we've been introducing coaches in other subject areas, which has been hugely beneficial. To someone like me, because I tend to gravitate more towards innovation, and that's my passion. So I have been privileged enough to be working with innovation coaches here for my 7 years. And in the past few years, we've also introduced a literacy coach and math coach. And they've been just so helpful to me in helping me fill in my gaps and misunderstandings and helping me step outside my comfort zone and grow as an educator.
Okay, so this is going to be like kind of an annoying question, but how do they do that? How do they help you fill in your gaps? How do they help you grow as a professional? Like, as a teacher, what are the things you this is going to come up a little bit later too, but what are the teachers you recognize in what coaches are doing that help you reach those goals you've set for yourself?
I think what they do is they have very very skilled ways of asking questions that maybe challenge some of my assumptions or elicit some of the areas that I don't know what I don't know. And so when they are with us in team planning meetings, they're usually kind of there listening to everyone around the table, and then they might step in with a question that makes everyone kind of pause because we hadn't considered that perspective before. So they're great at listening, they're great at synthesizing when we're in team meetings. And then on a personal level, I feel like they're people who are always able to give permission for potential. So any passion that I might have or one of my colleagues might have around, hey, I have this idea, I'm thinking about this, they're always there to support us and say, okay, well, what do you need from me? Is it a resource? Do you want to sit down and talk it through to find like a projection or a plan for how we can go about it? What role do you want me to play? How are we going to balance, co-teaching and graduate release model? So that's generally how they've been, if I don't know if I'm getting at your question or not, but in a collective setting, and then also in an individual setting, how they've been supporting me and my teammates.
That's really great to hear that you said something, giving you permission for potential. I just think that is such a great way to look at coaching. And you described kind of two ways that they work with you. They work with you on a team level and on an individual level. Is there any structure for that work? Like, is there any, they come in at a certain point in team meetings, they're always there on team meeting number 4, or like, you know what I mean? Is there anything like that that's kind of built into the structure of the school?
It's kind of a flexible model right now with our year level. There are times when we might have them in more frequently. There's some times when we have like these project-based weeks where we're off timetable, and then they help us through a planning protocol adapted from High Tech High, and they're usually running the meetings and kind of helping us see things from, again, different perspectives when we're projecting the week. And then there'll be other times when our team leader might just invite them in because we know we're going to be talking about an upcoming literacy projection, or we know that our next unit offers more opportunities and potential for innovation, looking at maths projections and whatnot, and seeing how we can layer them in a transdisciplinary manner. So it kind of ebbs and flows. We don't necessarily have a rigid structure where they're here like, once a week or twice every 2 weeks or something like that on day F or day A. It's more responsive and as needs for our team and individual desires. Yeah.
Cool. You have already addressed this in so many different ways, but I still want to ask it because maybe there's something else that can come out. As a teacher, thinking about this from your perspective as a teacher, but also the perspective of coaches who be watching this to like get the insight of a teacher's perspective, what are some good opportunities for coaches to work with you? Like, when do you want them to be there? When do you want them to support you? When do you want them to come and show themselves, I guess?
I would say when we're starting to ideate. I think that's when coaching can be at its most powerful. And I find, from a homeroom teacher perspective, it's very, very fast paced. A lot of times we're just trying to have enough prepared and thought through so that we can make it to the next week. And oftentimes when our thoughts are so full and we're being pulled in so many different directions, it becomes difficult to access our creative potential. And that's where I feel sometimes coaches can step in and help spark that and maybe reawaken that aspect of our consciousness that has been dormant while we've been just running around and busy with day-to-day responsibilities of a homeroom teacher. So before we plan a unit, maybe coming with some ideas and just say, hey, I've looked at, the central idea, the lines of inquiry, or I'm looking at this new writing projection, and here are some ideas that might help. Are there any of these that sound interesting to you? I think personally, my experience as a homeroom teacher is the times when I've been most innovative have been at the end of a semester or the end of a year in the last week, when things have been slowing down a bit, and I'm able to just reflect on some of the things that went well, some of the things that didn't, and then start to set goals for the next semester or the next year. And that's when I start to spark these new innovative potentials. And once we get running as a homeroom teacher, it can be difficult to find that pause to have those ideas come to you just as much as you are looking for them and seeking them yourself. So when a coach in whatever capacity can step in and be just that spark and say, hey, I've thought this through. Any of these sound interesting to you? It helps just, I think, rekindle the fire that sometimes might be lost when things get really busy at certain times of the year.
Okay, so here's a super controversial question to follow up on that.
Yeah.
That response speaks very much to your perspective as an educator, your passion and interest in being a creative and innovative thinker. Not every teacher feels the same way.
Sure.
So thinking about that response from other teachers and I know that's hard, I'm totally putting you on the spot. Do you think that most teachers would agree and say, yeah, I want a coach to come to me at the beginning of a unit when we're ideating? Or do you think most teachers would say something else? Like, I don't even know what that would be, but just curious about your perspective.
No, I was thinking about this before we started the conversation, and the one thing that I kept coming back to, and I'm not sure fully how I feel about it, but it's a book called The 5 Love Languages. And it just talks about how different people need different things. And some might need words of affirmation, some might need quality time or service, or gifts, or I think physical affection, which probably would not be appropriate. But I'm someone who I think speaks more to service. And so that's my perspective on how I would feel maybe best served by coaches. And I think that other people, that wouldn't necessarily be how the coaches could best support them. Some might just need that quality time where they're having lunch with their coach, and the coach is there and kind of weaving in and out of personal and professional conversation just to build that trust. And so we all have different, I feel, ways that we can receive and give trust. And so I think that's what probably makes it so challenging for coaches, is to get to know each individual so well that they know and can speak their love language or trust language so that they can build that relationship up. So going back to where we started, no, probably not. I don't think necessarily everyone would want that. That's something that I feel might help alleviate some of the overwhelming feeling or stress at times on me, and of course lends itself to my passion for creation and innovation. But for others, it might be there, the coach might be there in a different capacity, just to build relationships in a different manner.
It's something that comes up all the time when we talk about coaching with coaches and with others, that really the foundation of that role is the relationships you form with other people. So no matter what framework you're looking at it really is, everybody needs something different. And it is the coach's responsibility to figure out, okay, when I work with Reid, he wants me to come at the beginning of a unit to help spark creativity and innovation. But when I work with some other person, that's really more about having lunchtime conversations and making them feel like they're important to me and I'm there for them. And so I think that's a really good way to describe it.
Yeah, and I think it's also knowing how far to nudge, or how much or how often to nudge. Because I feel, if anyone approaches a coach, I think that's such an act of courage, because it's an act of humility in saying, this is something that I need help with, or I would like to think through. And so there's chosen vulnerability in approaching a coach. And so being able to recognize how much a person can be nudged, or how quick their thinking might be changed, or how strongly they're holding on to certain ideas, I think is just something that is important to consider as well. because all of us have, I think, different levels of I don't know if sensitivity is the word, but different ways that we would like to step outside our comfort zone. For some, it might take a little bit longer, and for others, they might just be jumping in. So, yeah, and I think as far as words of advice or suggestions for coaches who are listening, um, just making sure that, yeah, you know what the recipient needs. And that can be really tricky when you're working with teams, because everyone on a team has different needs.
Totally. I have like a million things I want to ask you, but I also know we don't want this interview to last forever. So I think you've hit on so many really good points there. And I know that in the beginning of this conversation, you talked about how long you've been at NIST and how fortunate you've been to work with so many different coaches and the, like, evolution of the coaching program at NIST, but it's not your only teaching experience. So have you ever had a situation where you have not been able to work with a coach? And what do you do in that situation when you don't have a coach to support you? Or maybe even thinking about the fact that you don't have a science coach at NIST. So like, what do you do when you don't have the opportunity to work with a coach?
Personally, I tend to struggle through something on my own as much as I can. But that's because I kind of am, when I have an idea and I have a vision, I can be maybe a little bit more stubborn about wanting to see if I can create it and whether it can come to fruition within the classroom. That doesn't mean it always turns out well, though, and certainly it's not more efficient. So I think one of the benefits of having a coach is that efficiency, and that I guess the points of reflection that are considered in the process of going through something new. When I haven't had a coach in the past and in previous schools, my development has not, I haven't been developing as quickly as I have at NIST, for sure. I think back to, I think it was maybe the Dalai Lama talks about, don't reflect back 3 months or a year, but, check yourself every 5 years and ask yourself, am I a better human? Am I happier? And I try to do that with my practice as well. And it's always surprising looking back 5 or 10 years and how far I come, but also maybe how I look back at who I was as an educator there, and in those times, and kind of shake my head and laugh and recognize how far I've come. And a lot of that's been attributed to the coaches that I've had direct experience with. So you get through it. If you don't have a coach, you do your best, you struggle, or maybe you just avoid because you are intentionally confronting something that's outside the realm of ease or comfort. But it's much more efficient and effective, I believe, when you have a coach alongside you.
I think, I forget who I was talking to earlier this week, but we talked about that most people know what their areas of weakness are. And the reason that they want to work with a coach is because they've tried this, they've tried that, they've tried these 16 things and none of it works. And they just need that outside pair of eyes. And I think you kind of described that so well about like just struggling and like being resilient and persistent, but having it not be necessarily the best path to overcoming whatever that challenge is. Yeah. And so it's nice to think about coaches as the people that give you permission to be awesome or whatever nice thing that you said earlier, but then also they support you in that way of dealing with or overcoming the challenges you know that you have, but you need a more efficient path to get there.
Yeah. I mean, if I can just draw upon like a visual, I was lucky enough to have a coach alongside of me as I competed in an adventure race. And when I'm looking at kind of the progression of going after a project or a vision or a year-long goal or something like that, it's thinking about kind of the long-term ups and downs. And there are going to be days and weeks or moments in the race when you're feeling great and the coach is right there alongside of you and they're supporting you. And there's going to be times when you're dragging your feet and your body and your mind are going to be breaking down. And to know that they're going to be right there next to you, supporting you along the way and believing in you, I think is just such a powerful friend and a powerful colleague to have with you in your personal and professional development.
Awesome. Okay. So another question for you. I feel like NIST has a very strong culture of coaching. So I feel like you're working in a place that has a lot of the essential elements for successful coaching in a school. What do you think that those are? What's needed to build that coaching culture? Like, what is happening, maybe either from your experience at NIST or from experience at other schools where maybe that wasn't in place, or just another place where it isn't, where you do have it? What are the essential elements for coaching success?
I would say, that they're maybe two-tiered. One, based on who's bringing in the coaches. As homeroom teachers, we don't have that power, that say necessarily. So the administration has to recognize and reflect and be honest with themselves on, hey, there's areas for improvement, there's areas for growth, which I think is such a powerful statement by leadership, just to celebrate successes, but also say, there's areas that we can continue to improve upon, and we're bringing in some people to help us grow collectively as a school. The other tier would be in those that tend to be coached more, the teachers and staff in the school. And I think the primary essential element is maybe open-mindedness, being open to having someone there. I think a culture of vulnerability and trust also needs to be prevalent within the culture, so that people feel like the coaches aren't there evaluating them, judging them, but they're there as almost like signposts along the way, who might be more specialized in a certain area, in a certain aspect of either pedagogy or a subject area, who can say, we might need to move in this area a little bit more. They're the ones who spend maybe a little bit more time with the research, texts that are written, where we homeroom teachers and other support services might not always have the time to do that, because we're planning lessons and assessing and feedback and the like. And so having someone there who can maybe alleviate some of that, I think is super helpful. So open-mindedness, culture of trust, permission, I think, to change, permission to try, permission to fail, all I think falls under the umbrella of vulnerability. And then I think there has to be drive. I think there has to be some sort of motivation from the individual that makes them want to change, that makes them want to improve and always become their best. And you can get as far as you can as an individual, but you always have those people in your life, whether it's a partner, a family member, a friend, or a coach, who can help you get a little bit further. So I think having that mindset is, if you want to call it a growth mindset, is crucial for not only the individual, but the collective culture of the school to flourish and grow even further.
So I have another challenging question. Do you think that coaching culture can be built in any school, or do you think it's specific to the pedagogical approach of the school? Like, I know NIST is a PYP school, or do you think it's specific to the size of a school, or can it be done anywhere?
Yeah, I think it can. I think that it's going to be important for schools to reflect on their context and their variables. And I think when it comes down to it, a school is a place that employs people. So there's an element of choice in who you employ. And so if you're looking for people who maybe fit a disposition and a mindset more than necessarily some other aspect that you might be hiring them on, a culture can grow. So I think it is possible. Obviously, the larger the school, I think the more challenging it can become. Smaller schools, you tend to have a little bit more of a personalized feel where momentum momentum can flow a little bit more quickly and efficiently. And I can't remember the video, but I think back to the video of the guy dancing.
Oh yeah.
How to start a movement,
Yeah.
I think. And so I think size of the school has something to say, but you're always going to have the change agents and the first followers within a school. And whether that first follower is the second of 12 or the second of 212, it does make a difference, but slowly with patience and time, I think, yeah, coaching culture can grow anywhere. A lot of it, I think, the sun needs to shine with leadership and administration, but the grass also needs to grow. And so there's kind of a reciprocal relationship between leadership and those that are also leading in different ways within the school from the bottom up.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about hiring with disposition and mindset before anything else, because I think you're right that you can build a culture of coaching anywhere, even just within a small team, if the people on the team have that disposition and mindset. And I almost feel like the reverse is true, that you can really damage it by going the other way.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking a little bit of the reverse, you've spoken a lot about the highlights of coaching and the benefits of coaching. Where in your experience, or that you might guess, that coaches could, or coaching as a system could fail? And what could we do about it? Like, where does it go wrong?
I don't know if I've ever had any experiences where coaching has failed or coaching has gone wrong. I think the fact that there is a coach present is the first step in the right direction. I think there's always opportunities for improvement and growth in coaching. I think sometimes, and I'm just thinking about coaching in general, like whether we're looking at it through in the educational context or life coaches and whatnot, it almost feels like there's a lot of onus put on the person to approach the coach. And as I mentioned before, that's a tough thing for many humans to do, because they're choosing a challenge consciously and intentionally, something that is going to maybe push them, make them uncomfortable, maybe break down mental constructs, maybe challenge emotional boundaries. And so sometimes I feel in the world of coaching, people don't necessarily put themselves out there because of how hard it is to approach someone and say, hey, I need help in this area. I think the other element is you don't know what you don't know. And so before some of the coaches came to NIST, for example, I didn't know enough about maths practice and literacy practice to feel fully competent. And it was only through them connecting me with what they knew that I was able to grow. So if a coaching model is only predicated on waiting, and maybe, I don't know if the word is passive, I don't think it's passive, but like if you're waiting on the coachee to approach the coach all the time, we might be slowing down evolution in an educational sense. So it's maybe a delicate dance, but I'm wondering if there are ways where the coach could find those that maybe would be more open to being approached and saying, hey, I've noticed this, can we try this? But doing it in a way that maybe, of course, doesn't threaten the coachee. And that's where I feel like a lot of co-teaching could potentially happen where, and I think about innovation, and things are changing so quickly, that even, a couple years outside of Coattail, I feel like I'm behind, and there's things that I don't know anymore that maybe I felt more confident with a couple years ago. So if one of our coaches was able to recognize, like, hey, you're using something that maybe isn't operating at its fullest potential because we have this new way of thinking about it, or a new tool that could be beneficial for your vision, I think that could help me fill in what I don't know. So I think, if I don't see there's no failing, but I do wonder, because of how busy homeroom teachers are sometimes, if the coaches could come with some pre-wrapped ideas, visions that are maybe half envisioned, and the other half could be filled in with those who maybe are wanting to step forward, but are having a difficult time finding the time to do so, unless it's taken out of their personal time at the end of the day before they go home, or they always have to meet during like lunch breaks or something like that. It can be hard to find that balance. So working with the efficiency of, I think, capitalizing on all the strengths that the coaches have, and maybe inviting rather than waiting to be invited.
Yeah, that is such a good point, and it is such a fine balance, and it's something I actually think about a lot, because there's like the cycles of coaching, and there's a stage of coaching that we talk about is more like consulting, and it's a little bit like problem solving, but I almost feel like that consulting part is also that the coach being invitational to the teacher, that here's something I'm thinking that might be interesting to you. And in many coaches' minds, the goal is always that coaching model where the teacher comes to you, because then you know that they're ready for that support. But your point is well taken, that A, that requires a lot of vulnerability, which I totally recognize. And B, sometimes there's just so much going on that even if you're like willing to be vulnerable, you literally need someone to step through the door and say like, hey, here I am. I have this thing for you. Can you make some time for me? Because you just don't, it's just not there. It's just not obvious. The time is not obvious.
Yep. And those have been, when the NIST coaches here do that with me, that's when I feel it's kind of like this co-authoring of education at that point. And it's been so helpful because, again, they've brought to attention things that I hadn't recognized, hadn't been aware of, or didn't know existed at the time. And I think that's where I was able to become my better self. And it was a great way for my students to also see them in a co-teaching role as well, when they're coming in saying, hey, we have these great resources, let me know if you want to come in. It's almost like a weight is lifted off our chest. And so
Cool.
It's appreciated greatly when that happens.
And this leads in perfectly to my next question, which, sorry for the sirens out there if you can hear them. What makes a coach invaluable to you? And I think you've already kind of addressed that, but maybe if you have some other thoughts or can highlight, what makes a coach invaluable to you?
I think it would be someone who kind of balances the, I got your back, I'm here to support you, but they're also, rather than just kind of having your back, they might also be kind of guiding you. And so it's not a blind support. It's not support for support's sake, but it's support with wisdom. And that's where I think coaches I think they're there to help you see what you might not be able to see. And we all kind of step in and out of coaching roles in all our relationships in our life, but within an educational context, I think someone who you feel you're supported by, someone who you feel they have your best interest at heart, and the kids, and what they might be wanting, desiring, needing, that you might be blind to at the moment, or not seeing clearly. So it's someone, I think, who there's a sense of trust, there's a sense of ease around, and someone who I feel is walking with you and alongside of you. And I think that's when the coaching role really um, can bring out the best in the teachers, can bring out the best in the students, and bring out the best in the culture of the school as well.
I really like your comment about support with wisdom, because I think also that when we were talking about the coaching cycle before, when we think about coaching, a lot of times we think about helping teachers bring out the answer that they have within them. And while that is like an ultimate kind of goal I always feel like I want to get to as a coach, and again, sorry for all the traffic, it's like
That's right.
Definitely road time now. I think that sometimes it's okay that the answer is not within the teacher. Like, it may be that because this is your area of specialty and it's something you as a coach are super passionate about, and it's something that you think about all day long because it's your thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing that that teacher doesn't have that answer within them. Sometimes they just need a little bit of guidance. And it's a very interesting thing among coaches when we talk to each other. Everyone's always idealizing this concept of this cognitive coaching, this peer-based coaching, this kind of pulling out the answer from someone else. But gosh, classroom teachers and subject area teachers, they have so much going on. It is possible, and again, not a bad thing, that they don't have the answer within them. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's okay that they don't know. I think that when we get into that level of kind of, it almost becomes like a guessing game, where it's like, no, you're not there yet, but maybe, what about this question? Is that going to help you get there? And I think it's quite inefficient. And I kind of, in a weird way, try to like take the behavior sometimes and then remove the content, and then like insert a different content or context to see if the behavior is quite logical. And I think back to like, when humanity was developing in our earlier years, and there might be a poisonous plant. When a child is confronting a poisonous plant, the adults aren't going to try to like coach them out of it and hope that they guess that that's not the plant you eat. They're there to kind of pass along the wisdom and knowledge that has been gleaned by previous generations. And I feel like I would agree that coaches can occupy that role as well, where I feel personally that you can still coach and pass along knowledge that the other person doesn't have, and it doesn't make the coachee any less inferior or capable.
Absolutely.
It's just efficient evolution.
Yeah, and I think it's a decision-making process on behalf of the coach, how far you push that. Well, let's try this question, let's try that question. Like, that's like takes a lot of practice and experience. And it's something that I think teachers who work with coaches who are just learning about those styles might, I don't want to say suffer, but that's the only word I can think of it. They might have to suffer through some of that questioning, where it's like, really, honestly, I don't know. Could you just tell me something?
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where we might be having these coaching meetings during a day when we got one eye on the coach and one eye on the clock. And it's like, my kids are coming back in 17 minutes. Like, we have 17 minutes. what are we going to do with this time? And if it becomes kind of a long drawn out conversation, like, those who have initiated a coaching session and maybe didn't get any sort of resolution or an actionable goal or event or vision out of it, they might have the perception that it's not worth my time. My time could be spent better in a different way because I only have 40 minutes, and so I need the time to be super productive, and of course be coached and not just told. So it is something that is a delicate dance, I think.
Absolutely. All right, last and final question. Did you ever have a time in your career when you didn't necessarily think that coaching was a valuable role in a school, and what shifted your perspective? Did you have like an aha moment where you were like, oh, this is what coaching is about. This is why it's so useful for me, or for teaching or learning in general?
I don't know if I ever, no, I mean, I didn't have a point where I was like, I wasn't wanting to be coached. And to be honest, I had my first coach at my previous school in Lima, Peru, and I had such a fantastic experience with her that I didn't ever want to envision myself working at a school without coaches, just because I saw how much they were able to add to the collective capacity of the teachers at the school, and how much they have helped me develop. I don't know if I've ever had like an aha moment. There have been collections of smaller aha moments. Sometimes I'm not able to recognize the aha at the moment. Only 3, 6, 9 months after, I look back and realize, oh, you came a long way, and it was thanks to the conversations or the gradual coaching, the subtle coaching that had been going on. I think sometimes, and this is maybe just my misconception, but I feel sometimes I look at coaching as almost like an immediate intervention that happens quite quickly over a short period of time, and I don't recognize the slow changes that are happening over the course of a year or 2 years, just being around some of the amazing coaches I've had the privilege to be around. And that's when you start to have the aha moments, is when you can reflect back with time and again use those metrics of several years, 3 years, 5 years, and look back at what you were doing and how much you've grown and changed, and what's caused that. And oftentimes it's the people you've come in contact with, whether they've been inspiring colleagues or the coaches that have illuminated a path that you didn't know existed. I think one of my biggest aha moments was a year-long co-teaching and coaching experience I had a couple of years ago with Tosca, when we tried, we kind of piloted a year-long inquiry or project around social entrepreneurship. And she came up to me early in the year and she's like, hey, I have this idea. Do you want to try it? And I didn't really even know what the idea was. And I was like, yeah. And I knew that I was going to be okay because I was going to get what I needed from Tosca. And as the year went on, there were times where, she took the lead to help me fill in the gaps where I had no idea what I was even getting into, and still kind of wrapping my head around the concept and how it might look. And there were other parts of the year where I was leading once I kind of had a vision and could see how it could be morphed in the classroom and with the time I had throughout the year. But it ended up being probably the most powerful learning experience that any of my students have ever had. And it was, in large part, if not in full part, due to Tosca's initiative and her vision and her support and walking and standing alongside me the entire journey. So those I think are the experiences that I will, when I'm done with education decades from now, look back on and take the most pride in, because I've seen the joy and the impact that it's had on my students. And then also a sense of accomplishment, knowing that we intentionally took on something challenging to both of us, knowing that there was a good chance we were going to fail, and doing it with vulnerability and openness and hoping for the best, but giving us that chance, that culture of permission to grow and try new things. And that's just something that I was really appreciative of and continue to be. And yeah, so I think a slow evolution of aha moments that continues to form.
That's awesome. I think your message has been so clear throughout our whole conversation that it is so important for coaches to get to know each teacher as an individual and understand what that individual teacher needs, because the kind of risks you're willing to take and the way that you look at coaching as someone walking on the path alongside you could be so potentially very different from other teachers. And as the coach, knowing that you're the person that wants to take the risk, knowing that you're the person that's willing to fail, you're the person that most coaches are like, where is that person? I need that person. I want to work with that person. But it takes a while to figure that out and understand all the different dynamics of all the different people on your staff. So I think that's really important for coaches to remember as they kind of listen to all the things that you have to share, is that it's about that personal connection and understanding the people that you're working with and what they need. That's how you support them.
Yeah, totally.
Which is like super obvious, but it was just really super clear in everything that you said. So I just thought I'd summarize it all.
Yeah. Important.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
I really appreciated that. I really appreciate the way that you describe coaching too. So it makes, I know we've never worked in that capacity, but it makes me feel really proud that you've worked with coaches that enable you to describe coaching in this way, because that's, I think, what most coaches want teachers to say. So thank you so much for all of those, I would say, kind words about coaching.
Yeah, I've had great, kind experiences, so it's easy to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching our video today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. At Eduro Learning, as you know, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got a free digital download for you called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit right in the description box below. And if you're looking for even more, we now offer private coaching sessions to help you work through any specific issue you might be having as a coach or even just as an educator. Do you have a problem you can't seem to solve? Get your introductory private coaching session for free with us. Learn more at edurolearning.com/private coaching. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.